Hey everybody, it's Tony Cottaspati from Great Vocal Majority website and YouTube channel, and I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about where we are with Trump and his first week or so in office. And I have to tell you, there's so much hand-wringing criticism over Trump's actions during these first few days. And, the bottom line is, it just proves to me that the Democrats and who you kind of expect to be wringing their hands, and the Trump haters, basically the never Trumpers, the Republicans that don't like Trump, still really haven't even attempted to understand the kind of person Donald Trump actually is as a politician. You know, every now and then there's a leader that comes along that breaks all the conventions and rules, and in a way Obama was like that to some degree. Not entirely. I mean, he did things his own way. He went overboard. He went in directions that a president's really not supposed to go, and Congress never really acted to stop him. Trump is different. He's unconventional in a different way because he's so impolitic. And by that I mean he just does what he says he's going to do. And politicians don't usually do that when they're first elected. They tend to hedge their positions. They say things to get elected. But not Trump. Trump hasn't really been like that. But what I think the people who are really freaking out after the first 10 days or so of Trump, they just seem so hopelessly conformed and married to convention of what they expect a president to be like. You know, when Obama was elected, he didn't act according to convention, and people didn't react the way they're reacting to Trump. What they said about Obama at the time, if you recall, was they kept saying things like, well, he will eventually moderate. And then every opportunity Obama had to moderate, he didn't moderate. He became even more extreme, more radical, and more oppositional to the Republicans. It was just, he became more and more partisan. And he was never subjected to the media criticism that Trump is, and Trump is getting it because, first of all, he's not a liberal, and a lot of the things he's doing are like the wish list of a lot of Republicans and conservatives. Not everything, though, and that's where he's running into trouble from basically all sides. But if you just go down this list of the things that he's done, I made a quick list of some of the things he's done. Now, the first thing he did when he came into office was that he said he was going to repeal Obamacare, and he got going on that from an executive order point of view as much as he possibly could, because Obama enacted a lot of things through executive order. Many of those things he wasn't really supposed to. But irrespective of that, once he did it, Trump can rescind it, which is what Trump has been doing. So there's the Obamacare. So you take that. Then remember how it took Obama almost all 8 years to decide whether the Keystone XL pipeline was something that should be built? And in the intervening time, another pipeline, the Dakota pipeline, has become controversial, and he put the kibosh on that one as well. They act like these are the only two pipelines that we've ever built. And what's really interesting about it is that there's something like, I may have to check my numbers here, but it literally is almost this many, something like 60,000 miles of pipeline in this country. Some of it is for chemicals like fuel oil and and jet fuel and things like that. And there are other pipelines that carry other things, but there are 60,000 miles of pipeline. Pretty sure that's the number in the United States. And we're adding one pipeline, and the Earth is going to fall off its axis. I mean, that's how crazy it gets. So Trump, obviously because Obama did a lot of things through his own decision, and Trump just said, yeah, we're going to build it. I mean, there it is. And he's just reversed that. Then he made a freeze on regulations. A freeze on regulations. And that's a great thing from a conservative point of view, because I think the average person doesn't really understand what a regulation actually is. When a law is passed, when Congress passes a law, that law will have to go to a particular agency that's, trusted or named in the law to carry it out. So if it's a healthcare law, it goes to the Health and Human Services Department. Maybe some other departments are involved. And they look at each line of the statute and they expand on it. The agency looks at it and says, okay, what did Congress mean when they adopted this line in the legislation? And they look at various things that will inform the agency on what the congressional intent was. And then they write a more explanatory version of the statute. So they look at the section and subsection of the statute. And they say, okay, this is what it means. And they give more, they put more meat on the bones of the legislation now. And those regulations are, not just written and that's it. There's public hearings regarding those regulations that takes months. There's back and forth. There's the people who are going to be affected by those regulations get to testify before the agency, and then they promulgate a regulation that kind of everybody will agree with. Pretty much. That's usually how it works. Regulations are not laws. They have the force of law because they usually are supporting a statute. Okay? Now, the more laws you have, the more regulations you're going to have. And so when Trump says we're going to have a freeze on regulations, what he's really saying is that we're not going to change or add to the regulatory regime underneath supporting these statutes. Sometimes the EPA, for example, will go back and say, we want to rewrite this area of that covers this statute. We want to rewrite the regulations for that. This is something Trump can have a real serious effect on, because he sets policy and he can tell the agency, this is how I want you to deal with this particular law. And that sets policy, and then the agency will write regulations that conform with the wishes of the policymakers. It's not changing the law, it's changing the interpretation by the agency of what the law means. So this is important, and this is a big deal, and this really helps businesses when regulations can be reduced and modified. Then he talked about building the wall on the Mexican border, which is what he ran on. There is money already in the budget. Then he withdrew from the TPP, which is very controversial for conservatives, because conservatives are all about trade. We want trade. Trade is important. When you have a comprehensive trade deal, it gets very convoluted, and the details are largely unknown. And with the way jobs have been hemorrhaging out of the country, people are very concerned about losing even more jobs when politicians are making deals and you're not even allowed to see what the elements of the trade deal are. That's not unusual, by the way. Whenever there is a big trade deal, the details of the deal are generally not known. But that's what Trump is complaining about. Trump is saying, look, we shouldn't have these multilateral 20-country gigantic trade deals. We should just deal with countries one by one. And that will make a better, fairer, more equitable situation for both countries. But when you have multilateral deals, well, now there's something that's what I'll call supranational. There's something above the nation states that is now laying over, superimposing itself on the governments. It's this thing, this amorphous thing, like this international partnership. And Trump is making a fair point, I think, that any kind of international trade deal like that has to be renegotiated, so we know we're not getting screwed. I mean, I think he's right. I think he's right about that. Then he reversed the Mexico City policy, which means that the United States will not be funding the abortions in other countries. This is something that goes back and forth every time there's a Republican. He reinstates the Mexico City policy. Every time there's a Democrat, he rescinds the Mexico City policy. It's just the back and forth that you normally get with the Democrats and Republicans on the issue of abortion. Then you had the federal hiring freeze. Thank God. Thank God there's a federal hiring freeze. We shouldn't be hiring more people. There's a general theory in the federal government that because the size of the country is growing, the size of the government has to be growing. I don't know why that's true. You know, in my experience, in my career in business, every year, and one of the things I did when I was in business in my career was I used to have to draw up expense budgets, and we used to have to build in every year an assumption of productivity. In other words, you know, we would have to do more with less every year. It was assumed. Now, I've had limited experience working in government very early in my career, but one thing I know I could tell you, at least back when I worked in government, the one thing they're not really concerned about in government is productivity. I can guarantee you, at least what my experience. Maybe things have changed. I don't think so, though. So he is saying, hey, look, you know, we've got to be able to attrit out people from agencies and departments and lose some people and still be able to get the job done. You know, I think that it's not a bad idea. Why shouldn't people work harder? I mean, these federal employees get paid a sight better than their counterparts in private industry. That's been proven over and over again. And it was never like that many years ago. It only became like that over the past 10, 15, 20 years. And because they're getting paid so well, they should work hard for that money. I mean, they're supposed to be in public service, right? So anyway, so that's what Trump did there. And that's going to also help close the budget gap. I know a lot of people say, look, it's not really going to close much of the budget gap. So much of the budget is in entitlement programs. We're locked into Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security to such a degree that it's overwhelming us. That's true. I don't disagree that a lot of the budget is locked in. But, you know, you do have a huge federal workforce, and if you just expected them to attrit out, like Trump said, something like 20%, you want to attrit out not even that many, you'd save like $250 billion over 10 years. That's a lot of money. That's an awful lot of money. So a hiring freeze isn't a bad idea. Doesn't mean it's going to be forever. Just means that until they get a handle on and control on spending, you got to have a hiring freeze. And I don't disagree with that at all. And then there's the expanding of the military. Now, I mean, Obama has hollowed out the military. So obviously we need to expand the military. A lot of people will argue with that. A lot of liberals are going to be upset with that because they're going to say, hey, you know, we have the biggest military in the world. Take the next 20 countries or combine their military spending. Yeah, that's true. So what? So what? We're the United States. We're the biggest, most powerful country in the world. We have interests all over the world. We have to have a big military, especially a Navy. We need a big Navy and Marines. We have to have that. We have to have expeditionary forces that are able to, on a moment's notice, go somewhere and kill people and break things. And then the most recent thing that's gotten everybody in an uproar is freezing the refugees coming to the United States. Now, freezing refugees is not, as the headlines are all saying, banning Muslims. The media has made itself so obviously slanted away against Trump. Look, I don't say that Trump shouldn't be criticized and Trump should be above criticism. No, and I don't agree with everything he does. Some of these things here that I talk about, I'm not so crazy about. Like, I'm not so crazy about withdrawing from the TPP. I'm not so crazy about picking a fight with Mexico, which I actually didn't mention yet. But I'm uneasy about that. But and I have criticized him for those things. But when it comes to refugees from places like Syria, you know, you see people in the on the internet. Some of these political commentators saying things like, you know, that we should allow these people from Syria here. Look at Europe, folks. Look at England. Look at Germany. Look at France. Look at some of these countries. Look what they're going through. These aren't women and children coming to the European continent. It's not women and children. It's military-age men. In some cases, almost 80% of the people coming are military-age men. And oh gee, look what happens once they're in your country. Look what's happening in Germany right now, for example. In Germany, on rail cars, women and children have to be segregated because the Muslim men, some of them, believe that if a woman is unescorted by a man, she's fair game for sexual assault. I mean, the culture is not compatible. I'll leave it at that. It's really not good. And, you know, we've had all kinds of incidents. There's been a few terror attacks. Yes, there's 800,000 or 1 million people in Germany, and there hasn't been dozens of terrorist attacks. Yes, that's true. But think about the ones that there has been. Look at the one that happened on Bastille Day, or in that period in France. I mean, just look at the radicalism of the people that are coming over here or over to those countries and what they're doing, the damage they're doing. It doesn't take many people. Look at the Orlando nightclub shooting. Now, I know that fellow was not the guy who did the actual shooting was the son of a refugee, who's also a sympathizer of ISIS, by the way. You know, and here he has a son who goes into a gay nightclub and shoots 100 people and kills like 50 of them. He's one guy, and he did that. One guy. I mean, everybody's saying, well, you know, that you're penalizing the thousands and thousands of others Well, yes, you are. Necessarily. Necessarily. You have to do it. Trump is correct. You must be able, he uses the term extreme vetting. It's not a great phrase. Intense, enhanced, maybe. Extreme sounds weird. I don't know what extreme vetting is. What I think they need to do is they have to be very careful about who they let into this country. And I don't know how they do their vetting, but they vetting people that come from areas where there's no records of anybody. How do you do that? I'm always going to argue in favor of safety and security of the people in the country. And Trump has offered to construct safe zones in Syria. We should hold him to that. He should do that, because most of those people don't want to come to the United States. They want to go and they want to live in their home country. So I think he's getting, the left is just going crazy. I think the ACLU is now starting in on this. But the point I'm making is about this whole thing is that everybody's getting all nervous and excited because Trump is doing all this and he's doing all that. And there's a lot of hand-wringing. Oh, my God, this has been a horrible week. Well, what these people are really just proving is that they're liberals. Of course, they're not going to like what he's doing. They're not going to like what he's doing because most of the things he's doing, are things that Republicans and conservatives are just gaga about. But a lot of what he's doing is just the opposite for liberals and progressives. But it's kind of funny because here's Trump breaking with convention. He's breaking the mold, so to speak, and he's doing things unconventionally. And who are the people that are against it the most? The progressives. The progressives who are not supposed to be for the status quo, who aren't supposed to be for convention. And here they are. They're like standing up demanding the status quo. I mean, come on. It's a bit much. So I just think that people have to understand something about politicians. Politicians don't like to fix problems. They don't. Politicians like problems to continue. Politicians like to appear to be doing something while actually doing nothing. Because there's too much risk in actually trying, too much political risk in trying to actually solve a problem. Because when you really think about it, when you try to solve a problem, it might not work. Look at Obamacare. Obamacare tried to solve a problem. It was like the Democrats felt they had all the power they needed to get it through, and they barely did it, but they did it, and they got it through, and they pushed it through, and it's been a disaster. And look at what's happened to the Democratic Party since then. The Democratic Party's gone like just like that. The only person who had any success since Obamacare has been passed was Obama. He got reelected. That was it. He was the only one. I mean, when you look at what happened to them in the state legislatures and governorships and Senate and everything else, they really got hurt. And the main contributing reason was Obamacare. That was because they tried to fix a problem. Even when you look back, if you look back at Roosevelt, during the Depression, Roosevelt figured out that he would do better as long as the unemployment rate was high. So what he would do is he would create these high-profile programs that made it appear as though people were going back to work, like WPA and organizations like that, CCC. And people were working in those programs, but they were minuscule compared to the problem of unemployment throughout the country. I mean, there's no way that government program was going to be able to fix the problem in any measurable way, for the whole country. But it looked good, and it got him elected. So that's what I mean when I say they're not really doing anything. They just want to appear like they're doing something. Because what was Roosevelt really doing? He was doing that. Those programs were really public relations for him. That's really what it was. And it worked on people because people believed that, well, Roosevelt's trying to fix things, even though the unemployment rate's still 18% or whatever it was in the latter part of the Depression. So politicians have broken that code. I mean, and if you look at every problem we have, poverty, racial inequality, whatever it is, nothing politicians have done have fixed that problem, fixed any problem. They make maybe these little incremental improvements, but they don't even want to fix the problem because they have careers. And if they fix the problem and there is no more problem, then what do? They have to find another problem. Otherwise, there's no good reason to elect them. They're not going to run on, hey, I fixed the problem for you. That has no lasting value. I mean, they need to have a continuing problem that they're fighting for your rights against some boogeyman. And this is what happens all the time. I mean, the Democrats, use the rich. They use, white people as racists, and stuff like that. And the Republicans use Democrats because Democrats really are, they are so divisive and, anti-business and anti-everything. So, but the point is that politicians don't like to fix problems. They like to appear as though they are addressing problems. But when you got a politician like Donald Trump that comes along and he wants to actually fix problems because that's from whence he came. I mean, he's a businessman. Businessmen can't last just appearing like they're fixing something. Businessmen have to actually do things. They have to actually accomplish things. So when you have a guy like Trump, well, now you got a guy who's going to try to fix problems. And Democrats and Republicans both are going, hey, wait a minute, man. Hey, wait, whoa. Slow down. Now you're hearing Republicans say, well, we're not really sure we can really do this Obamacare thing. Because they know that Trump may actually have something that will, for a very large portion of the country, solve the problem. But Republicans, because like I said about the political risk, because there's always a risk it may not work, and they're not willing to do it because they see their careers as more important than fixing the problem. And that's it. That's what I wanted to tell you, and I'm hoping that this long video was instructional, helpful, or entertaining. That's it for me. Take care. Tony Conespati, Great Vocal Majority. Thanks, guys.